Hidden hypnotic secrets of Gurdjieff's teachings. What they don't want you to know. What if I told you that one of the most influential spiritual teachers of the 20th century was actually a master hypnotist who deliberately designed his teachings to place his followers in a perpetual trance state? That the very books his devotees study for decades are carefully constructed hypnotic devices designed not just to teach, but to reprogram the mind at levels beyond conscious awareness. G.I. Gurdjieff remains an enigma, wrapped in mystery, a man who claimed to have traveled to the most remote corners of Central Asia, discovering ancient wisdom supposedly preserved in hidden monasteries. But what if his greatest secret wasn't in these exotic tales, but in plain sight, his self-proclaimed expertise as a professional hypnotist? Have you ever wondered why Gurdjieff intentionally destroyed his identification documents, birth certificates, and passports? Why he deliberately cultivated an atmosphere of intense secrecy around his life? Why he wrote books so intentionally complex and obscure that they require years, even decades of dedicated study? Perhaps most importantly, why his teachings continue to exert such a powerful influence over followers nearly a century after his death. Today, I'm going to reveal what Gurdjieff himself admitted in his writings, but what most spiritual seekers have completely overlooked: that his masterwork, All and Everything, was designed as what he called a general hypnotic process, a literary spaceship called Karnak that would continue to exert hypnotic influence long after his physical presence was gone. This isn't conspiracy theory. These are Gurdjieff's own words, hidden in plain sight within his deliberately labyrinthine texts. His cosmic mythology, his invented terminology, his fragmented narrative style, all of these were not just teaching devices, but sophisticated hypnotic techniques designed to bypass critical thinking and implant ideas directly into what he called the subconscious mind. You're about to discover how one man created a hypnotic legacy that continues to influence thousands worldwide. A literary technique so sophisticated that even devoted followers rarely recognize they're being subjected to it. Why did Gurdjieff call himself a professional hypnotist? What did he mean when he spoke of fixing and unfixing ideas in localizations? And most critically, how did he transform ancient hypnotic methods into a literary form that would outlast his physical presence? The answer lies in what Gurdjieff called his technical specialization, a highly sophisticated understanding of human psychology that recognized our fundamental vulnerability, the fragmentation of human consciousness, and our innate susceptibility to suggestion. If you've ever been curious about the deeper mechanisms behind spiritual teachings, the psychology of influence, or the hidden techniques that allow certain ideas to bypass our critical faculties and take root in our deepest mind, stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will forever change how you understand not just Gurdjieff, but potentially all spiritual teachings. The professional hypnotist revealed, let's talk a bit about Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff never hid his expertise in hypnotism. In fact, he openly proclaimed it. In his magnum opus, Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, he created a character, Beelzebub, who adopts the profession of physician hypnotist to gain unlimited access to the inner world of people of all classes. This literary device was Gurdjieff's way of telling us exactly who he was and what he was doing. But most revealing is this admission from Beelzebub himself. I may say that I already had a very wide experience in this specialty, having during my previous elucidation of certain subtle points of the psyche of individual favorites of yours many times had recourse to methods used there by such a kind of physician. What Gurdjieff is confessing here is extraordinary, that he has been using hypnotic methods throughout his entire narrative. He is telling us that the very tales we are reading are themselves hypnotic inductions. To understand why this matters, we need to understand Gurdjieff's theory of consciousness. According to him, humans exist in a perpetual state of what he called waking sleep, a disharmonized state where our consciousness is split between waking consciousness and subconsciousness. This split, he claimed, makes humans uniquely vulnerable to hypnotic influence. Most fascinating is Gurdjieff's claim that this susceptibility to hypnosis is found nowhere else in the universe. This psychic particularity, namely of falling into a hypnotic state, is inherent to the three-brained beings only of this planet of yours, and one can therefore say that if they did not exist, then in all our great universe there would not exist, in general, even a being notion of hypnotism. Think about the implications of this statement. Gurdjieff is telling us that humans are essentially walking around in a perpetual hypnotic trance already, and that what we recognize as hypnotism is merely a more concentrated and accelerated version of our normal state. If you're finding this information valuable so far, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. It helps more people discover this hidden knowledge that's been concealed in plain sight for nearly a century. The three conditions for literary hypnosis. What makes Gurdjieff's approach so revolutionary is that he discovered how to induce hypnotic states not just in person, but through written text. This was his true innovation, creating what he called a general hypnotic process that would continue working long after his death. Through careful analysis of his writings, we can identify the three specific conditions Gurdjieff created to induce hypnotic states in his readers. First condition, the willing subject. Gurdjieff knew that hypnosis requires a willing subject. Throughout his writings, he emphasizes the importance of seeking, of curiosity, of the desire to know. By positioning himself as an enigmatic figure with access to ancient wisdom, he created an atmosphere where people would willingly subject themselves to his influence. As Beelzebub tells his grandson Hussein, "When at the beginning of our journey I noticed that you were very interested in the three-brained beings of the planet Earth, I then decided, under the aspect of gratifying that interest of yours, to tell you everything about them in such a way so that there should be crystallized in you for your future being association the required what are called ego plasticuri, without any admixture of doubt." The term ego plasticuri refers to psychic visualizations implanted in the mind. Here, Gurdjieff is openly admitting that he uses his readers' curiosity as a gateway to implant ideas in their psyche. More revealing is his distinction between the reason of knowing and the reason of understanding. The former is temporary knowledge acquired by the intellect alone. The latter, which Gurdjieff aims to induce, becomes an inseparable part of being essence. In other words, it bypasses critical thinking and becomes part of one's identity. Second condition, emotional engagement. Gurdjieff understood that hypnosis requires strong emotional engagement. He specifically mentioned intense expectation, faith, fear, or passions such as hate, love, sensuality, and curiosity as emotional states that facilitate hypnotic induction. His writings deliberately cultivate these states. The cosmic mythology, the claims of ancient wisdom, the sense of being initiated into secret knowledge, all of these create intense curiosity and expectation. His challenging writing style, which often steps on the corns of readers by attacking their cherished beliefs, provokes emotional reactions of either love or hate. Most ingeniously, he created an atmosphere of urgency by suggesting that his teaching represented humanity's last hope for awakening before some cosmic deadline. This sense of impending doom generates fear, another emotion that facilitates hypnotic induction. Third condition, sustained concentration. The final condition for hypnosis is sufficiently long and persistent, intentional, or automatic concentration of thought and feeling on the object. Gurdjieff's writings demand extraordinary concentration. His sentences are long and complex, his terminology unfamiliar, his narrative structure deliberately disorienting. He instructed his readers to read each of his books 3 times in a specific order, creating a regime of study that could occupy decades. This sustained concentration on his text creates the perfect conditions for what hypnotists call cognitive overload, a state where the critical faculties become exhausted, allowing suggestions to bypass conscious resistance and lodge directly in the subconscious. The architecture of literary hypnosis. What makes Gurdjieff's approach particularly sophisticated is the literary structure he developed. He called it the Three Brothers approach, based on a film he reluctantly watched during his recovery from an automobile accident. In this structure, 3 characters, Beelzebub, mental, Hussein, emotional, and Ahun, physical, represent the 3 brains, or centers of the human organism. Through their dialogue, Gurdjieff creates what he calls xenofocalian friction, the friction of affirming and denying ideas that allows new perceptions to crystallize in the reader's understanding. Most revealing is Beelzebub's admission that he learned the laws of the fixing and unfixing of ideas in localizations during his sojourn as a professional hypnotist. This is nothing less than an admission that the entire narrative structure of his magnum opus is designed according to hypnotic principles. The dialogue form allows Gurdjieff to target different centers of the reader's psyche simultaneously. While the surface narrative appears to give readers autonomy in forming conclusions, Beelzebub admits that the information is presented in such a premeditated order that readers will inevitably derive the conclusions Gurdjieff intended. As he puts it, Hussein would be able to marshal his own subjective reasoning concerning all causes only based on certain facts which I have told you. In other words, the reader believes they are thinking independently, when in fact, they are being guided along a predetermined path. If you're still with me and finding this analysis eye-opening, this would be a perfect moment to hit the subscribe button and notification bell. What I'm about to share next reveals the ultimate purpose behind Gurdjieff's hypnotic techniques. Karnak, a spaceship of perpetual hypnosis. Perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of Gurdjieff's work is his creation of what we might call a perpetual hypnotic device. His series of books, collectively known as All and Everything. He symbolically represents this through the spaceship Karnak, which carries Beelzebub through the cosmos as he tells his tales to his grandson. This is no mere literary device, it's a metaphor for the function of his writing itself. Gurdjieff understood that his physical presence would eventually end, but he wanted his teaching to continue exerting influence long after his death. By encoding hypnotic techniques directly into his writing, he created what he called all and everything needed for the continuation of his legacy. As this analysis shows, all and everything is itself the perpetually hypnotizing spaceship Karnak, released into the interstellar space of mystical traditions, everlastingly propelled by the powers of attraction and repulsion emanating from the magnetic gravity of the dedicated reader's attentions, forever fueling the personally and socially constructed enigma of Gurdjieff's teaching and life. The intentional complexity of his writing ensures that readers spend years, even decades, immersed in his ideas. The fragmentation of information across multiple volumes creates a sense that the full understanding is always just beyond reach, maintaining the curiosity that fuels continued study. Most ingeniously, by creating a teaching that emphasizes self-observation and freedom from external influences, Gurdjieff masks the very hypnotic influence he exerts. Readers believe they are becoming more aware and less susceptible to suggestion, even as they absorb his ideas at a subconscious level. The ethical questions. This raises profound ethical questions. Was Gurdjieff's use of hypnotic techniques manipulative, or was it a necessary methodology for transmitting what he believed was essential knowledge? Gurdjieff himself addressed this question. He claimed that the properties of organ Kunda buffer, his term for humanity's susceptibility to illusion and suggestion, could only be removed through knowledge and application of hypnotic science. In other words, he saw hypnosis not as manipulation, but as medicine, a necessary treatment for humanity's disharmonized state. He specifically referenced ancient Tikliamishyan civilization, claiming that they used hypnotism as a sacred process performed in temples to destroy certain properties particularly unbecoming to them. This suggests he viewed his hypnotic techniques as a form of spiritual therapy rather than manipulation. But the question remains, can submission to one form of hypnotic influence, even if benevolent, truly free one from all hypnotic influences? Or does it simply replace one trance with another? Today, Gurdjieff's legacy continues through numerous foundations, institutes, and study groups worldwide. His books continue to be studied, his movements performed, his music played. And according to his own explanation, his hypnotic influence continues to operate. What's most remarkable is how few of his followers recognize the hypnotic nature of his teaching methodology. Even scholars who have devoted their lives to studying Gurdjieff often overlook his explicit statements about his use of hypnotic techniques in his writing. This blindness itself may be evidence of the effectiveness of his methods. As he stated, if the person they hypnotize gaze at a shining or brilliant object, the chief factor for this must be the, on their part, intentional or automatic concentration of thought and feeling. The brilliance of Gurdjieff's approach is that his teaching itself becomes the shining object that focuses attention while simultaneously convincing followers that they are becoming more awake, more conscious, less susceptible to outside influence. Gurdjieff's integration of hypnotic techniques into spiritual teaching represents one of the most sophisticated psychological approaches in modern spiritual history. Whether you view it as manipulation or medicine largely depends on your assessment of his intentions and the actual effects of his teaching. What's undeniable is that Gurdjieff himself was explicit about his methods. He openly identified as a professional hypnotist, explained the mechanisms of hypnosis in detail, and described how he applied these principles to his writing. The evidence isn't hidden. It's stated clearly throughout his work, particularly in Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson. This raises profound questions for anyone engaged with spiritual teachings. How many other spiritual teachers have employed similar techniques? How can we distinguish between teachings that liberate our consciousness and those that simply replace one form of sleep with another? Most importantly, how can we approach spiritual study with both openness and critical awareness? Gurdjieff himself might suggest that the answer lies in developing what he called objective consciousness, a state where all three brains, or centers, function harmoniously, allowing us to perceive reality without the distortions of our mechanical associations. But then again, that suggestion itself might be part of the hypnotic induction. So I leave you with these questions. In your pursuit of spiritual knowledge, how do you determine what to accept and what to question? How might the books on your shelf be influencing you beyond your conscious awareness? And if we're all already in a hypnotic trance, as Gurdjieff suggested, what would true awakening look like? Perhaps the answers lie in developing the very quality Gurdjieff emphasized most: conscious attention to our own psychological processes. The freedom that all spiritual teachings ultimately promise might lie in the space between sleeping and waking, between mechanical reaction and conscious response. Think about it, and until next time, stay awake if you can.